Hey, YouTube, look at me. Look at me. You looking at me? Don't take those two drugs at the same time. You're just asking to go see your God at their pearly gates shortly afterwards. Let's look at why. What the f*** is going on, YouTube? It's Ashcon, aka Dropped Out Beats, back again with another Addiction Neuroscientist Reacts video. Today we're going to be looking at Demi Lovato on the Joe Rogan Experience, talking about her struggle with drug addiction and the brain damage that she experienced after her drug overdose. I actually didn't even know that she experienced brain damage until I watched this interview, so this is definitely a good one. We're going to look at how a drug overdose can cause brain damage and also look at two drugs you definitely should not combine. Bad idea. With that being said, not going to waste y'all's time. Let me take my big, ugly head off the screen, put Demi Lovato's beautiful face on the screen, and let's get into it.
I always think of Xanax as this thing that people did, just no big deal. Just, oh, you take a Xanax, you relax. Take a Xanax, have a glass of wine, relax. I had no idea how difficult those things were to kick.
Hey, YouTube, look at me. Look at me. You looking at me? Don't take those two drugs at the same time. You're just asking to go see your God at their pearly gates shortly afterwards. Let's look at why. First, we're going to head over to the Habibis of 2-Minute Neuroscience, and we're going to watch about 5 seconds of them explaining how alcohol works on your GABA receptors. GABA is the major inhibitory neurotransmitter system of your brain that helps regulate your brain activity. Alcohol works on GABA receptors through the way that 2-Minute Neuroscience is going to show us. With that being said, I'll shut up and let him explain.
Alcohol increases GABA activity at a subtype of the GABA receptor known as GABA A. The mechanism by which this occurs is still not clear, but it is thought that alcohol may act as a positive allosteric modulator, meaning it binds to a site on the receptor that is separate from where GABA binds, and increases the effect GABA has when it binds to the receptor itself. The immediate effect of this action typically is the inhibition of neural firing.
So we heard there that the effect of alcohol binding to the GABA receptor is an inhibition of neural firing. Therefore, we have decreased neural activity. That's what people mean when they say that alcohol is a depressant. They're not saying that alcohol is a they're not saying that alcohol makes you psychologically depressed. They're saying that alcohol depresses the nervous system communication through its increasing of GABA receptor activity. Now, if we continue our nerdiness, you know what I'm saying, and we look at these GABA receptors a little bit more closely, let me zoom into this bad boy here. Look at this GABA receptor. We can also see this BZD. This actually stands for benzodiazepine. So there's actually a benzodiazepine binding site within the GABA receptor that benzodiazepines bind to and then act as a GABA agonist to increase the amount of chloride going through the GABA channel. And so if you take alcohol and Xanax or whatever benzodiazepine you may have at the same time, you're doubling up on the amount of GABA communication that's happening in your brain, and so you're much more likely to overdose in that case of doubling up on the GABA receptor activity. With that being said, let's get back into the interview.
Until, well, two things. One, my friend Jordan Peterson got off of it, and it took him like a year, and he was in hell. And then talking to another friend, Hamilton Morris, who is a real chemist and really understands like the actual mechanisms of what these drugs do to your mind and your body and why it's so difficult to get off of them. But benzodiazepine, Xanax, and those type of drugs, those antidepressants or anti-anxiety rather, those medications are some of the most difficult drugs to get off of. Way more difficult even for many people than heroin.
Yeah, so in my experience, when I have withdrawal from heroin, I'm not worried necessarily about what's going to happen to me physically. When I have had to come off of Xanax in the past, I've had to talk to a doctor about it, get on a prescription to get off of it. It's a whole thing, because people don't realize that heroin. I don't know if anyone has died of a heroin withdrawal, but it's not typical for people to die from heroin withdrawals. It's typically alcohol and benzodiazepines.
Yeah, those are the two big ones.
Yeah, those ones, because without properly withdrawing off of them, you can go into a grand mal seizure, and that's where it gets scary.
That's terrifying. The other thing that Hamilton was explaining is that it changes your baseline, that when you get on these things and it does alleviate some of your anxiety, but then when you get off of them, it actually accentuates your anxiety. So your anxiety, whatever you had before, is now elevated. So it becomes more difficult to get off of them because you needed them because you were trying to alleviate your anxiety. Now you get off of them and you're more anxious than you've ever been before.
Yeah, so we're going to pause there because I have intimate relationship with that idea, not having had a benzodiazepine addiction, but the lab I worked for in grad school actually studied this idea that drugs like alcohol and benzodiazepines over time cause you to have lower anxiety while you're on the drug, but then when you get off of the drug, you rebound and you have really bad anxiety. And this is because of the neural circuits that are involved in fear and anxiety. So if we look at these neural circuits here, we can see a variety. Let me take my big head off the screen. If we look at these neural circuits here, we can see a variety of the subregions of the prefrontal cortex are involved in helping regulate fear and emotional responses, along with the amygdala and hippocampus and parahippocampal gyri. So hippocampus and parahippocampus are going to help us, are going to be some of the circuitry involved in memory, and that's going to be sending projections to the amygdala, which is plays a major role in fear startle responses. And so we can see here there's a bunch. If we look here, got another super nerdy graph for you guys. So this is in the basolateral amygdala and central amygdala. So this is actually all of where my grad school brain work focused, was in this basolateral amygdala. We can see this triangle-shaped cell here. That's going to be a glutamate pyramidal neuron. But then all of these little circular things around the cell are GABA interneurons that are helping regulate the excitability of this triangular pyramidal neuron. And so if we have too much activity from this pyramidal neuron, we're going to see an increase in anxiety, an increase in fear. When you're on a benzodiazepine or you're drinking alcohol and you're feeling fearless, it's because you're activating all of these GABA interneurons that are surrounding these glutamatergic pyramidal neurons. They're dampening that excitability down, so they're decreasing the communication from this triangular pyramidal neuron, and that's decreasing your fear and anxiety, right? If we have a bunch of GABA from these interneurons, we decrease excitability of the pyramidal neuron, we decrease anxiety. But once we remove that GABA agonism by stopping the benzodiazepine or stopping drinking alcohol, we're going to basically take the brakes off of this pyramidal neuron, and it's just going to go crazy. It's just going to start going crazy, and you're going to have super bad anxiety. So that's kind of how benzodiazepines and alcohol, if you're struggling with that addiction and you stop taking it, which you need to wean off of both of those, being alcohol and benzodiazepines, to stop yourself from having a grand mal seizure. Because again, as we talked about in the Lil Xan video, go back and check it out. Alcohol and benzodiazepines are, from a bird's eye view, GABA agonists. When you come off of those drugs, your GABA rebounds and it plummets, which allows all of these glutamatergic neurons throughout your brain to just start firing like crazy. And that causes what's called excitotoxicity. And that's going to cause brain damage and kill you and lead to, first it's going to lead to seizures, then it's going to kill you. Anyway, let's get back into the video and hear what else Demi had to say.
Right. So it's not even back to normal.
Right.
Is that what it felt like with you?
To be honest, the last time that I had to withdraw from benzos was 10 years ago. So, and I just remember.
How old are you now?
28.
So you were 18 years old and you were withdrawn from benzos.
Or 19. 18 or 19, yeah. And that experience, I just remember it was my first time ever going into withdrawals from something, and I felt like I had the flu. I was on the couch for a week, just watching TV, sleeping. It was not fun. I had no energy because I was coming off coke, just sleeping. It was
What
not,
did they put
not good.
on? What did they put you on to help you get off of benzos?
Some other thing. I don't know. It was a prescription that my psychiatrist gave me. But
Did it help?
it was supposed to help wean me off so that I wouldn't go into a seizure. It wasn't like it actually helped me like mentally or anything.
Right.
Yeah, so basically Joe is asking, did the more mild benzo that you were prescribed by the psychiatrist, did that help relieve any anxiety that you might have had during withdrawal? And Demi's basically saying, like, no, not necessarily. I was also withdrawing off of cocaine, so I was just sleeping a lot. But the benzodiazepine that she was prescribed on was purely just to keep her alive. You know what I mean? It wasn't there for mental help. It was just to keep her alive. And so that is the reason you cannot cold turkey quit benzodiazepines if you have a serious benzodiazepine addiction. With that being said, let's skip ahead a little bit here to hear what else Demi had to say about addiction and an overdose that she experienced. Here we go. Let's get into it.
Whatever, I went to treatment for like a relapse. I relapsed in 2019.
And it was heavy.
And it was a heavy one.
Well,
Yeah.
explain to everybody what you went through, because it's like it sounds normal,
Yeah.
but you almost died.
So I overdosed on heroin and crack. The heroin was laced with fentanyl. And I OD'd in 2018. And that experience was a near-death experience for me. The doctors told me I had 5 to 10 minutes before it was too late. When they found me, I was blue. There was blood. I had 3 strokes, a heart attack, and multiple organ failure. And I still have brain damage from it. And
What kind of brain damage?
so I have blind spots in my vision, and I also had hearing loss from everything. The blind spots are like I don't drive. I can't, unless I was on like an open dirt road and I could just I just don't want to put other people at risk on the roads.
So you, normally you see everything. Like you see everything in front of you right now?
No.
No.
So even like your face, I see your eyeballs. When I'm looking at your eyes, I see your eyes, but I don't see your nose, your mouth, or even your microphone.
What do you see? This part.
It looks like I looked at the sun.
Whoa.
You know when you're a kid and you look at the sun because someone told you not to, because I'm that kid? Yeah, it's like that.
That's like the easiest way to tell if your kid's gonna do drugs or not, I guess. Maybe like, hey, look at the sun, or don't look at the sun. And if they start looking at the sun, you're like, damn it, this kid's gonna start doing coke.
That when you look at the sun and like, or even like a camera flash, and it kind of goes like greenish, bluish. It's not black, but you can't see. And it's just like a blind spot that takes over kind of like everybody's bottom half of their face.
Whoa.
And so
But could you focus on someone's bottom half of their face? If they were smiling, could you look down at their teeth?
I have to look down at people's mouths when they talk.
So you only see like a stripe, like a strip of their face.
Yeah, literally just exactly where you put it. I could see the top of your fingers, but not your hand. And so for the first few months, like I couldn't read out of a book. I was so hard to, like, tweezing my eyebrows, couldn't do that at first.
How do you live?
How do you live? Exactly. My brows are extremally important to me, so that was a huge thing.
Fabulous.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're doing a great job, whatever you could see.
Thank you. Whatever you can see. You're a savage. Oh my God. But yeah, so there was things that, and I had to ask like opinions on my outfit, like.
Yeah, so we'll pause there because I actually learned something in this. I didn't know that you could actually experience hearing loss from opioid use and overuse, I guess you could say, because supposedly there are opioid receptors in your inner ear that can become damaged in the case of an overdose that they're finding out. I was just reading something from Rutgers. That's the first I had heard about this. But this is a great example of why we need a safe supply of drugs. I know a lot of you all are gonna think I'm crazy, but tell me I'm an idiot down in the comments. But if Demi Lovato had bought heroin that she knew was heroin and was from a legal source, she most likely would have not have overdosed and she would not have brain damage. But because we have a tainted supply of powdered substances where everything contains fentanyl and fentanyl analogs, she was the victim of fentanyl poisoning and thus has retained serious brain damage from it. And so if you're not familiar with where your vision takes place in your brain, it's actually all the way back here. So, you got your eyeballs in your front here. Well, the light comes into your eye, gets sent through the optic nerve, goes to a place called the thalamus in your brain. Then the thalamus sends it back here to the vision center or the visual cortex in your brain. That's all the way in the back. So, or all the way in the back of your head. So, just something to think about that. We always hear this talk about, dopamine and drugs altering dopamine systems, but drug overdoses and they can have serious effect on your sensory systems. I mean, even I didn't think about that. I think so much, I'm a normal person. I don't know everything about drugs and drug addiction, and people typically think, you either have a drug overdose and you die or you don't and you're fine. But no, there's a spectrum of middle ground where you could just be suffering. I really can't stress the danger of using those substances that you don't know what the hell is in it, right? You could have brain damage for the rest of your life and not be able to see like someone's mouse, like Demi's saying, because you had a drug overdose. And so basically the reason that she had a stroke is because in an overdose situation, you have hypoxic brain conditions. That means low oxygen in the brain. Low oxygen in the brain can then increase the likelihood for strokes. And so I actually Googled what is a stroke before we got into this, so I could easily explain to you guys what a stroke is. So we have an ischemic stroke, which is the most common type of stroke, accounting for 85% of cases, which is blockages caused by blood clots, fatty deposits, plaque or narrow blood vessels. Or we could have bleeding in the brain, which is called a hemorrhagic stroke, which occurs when an artery ruptures in the brain. But with that being said, let's kind of let Demi close us out in her own words so that we can kind of hear the contradictory feelings that she has about drugs and the role they play in her life.
So I often say, and this is really hard for people to hear sometimes, but I think that drugs saved my life. at times, because had I not had something to medicate with, I wouldn't be here. I would have taken my life by now. I've dealt with suicidal ideation since I was 7 years old. And that's just something that's always been a part of my journey. I don't know why, but depression is, I've had a journey with that.
Yeah, so we'll kind of start to end the video there, because as you can see, it's very contradictory, right? Drugs saved my life, but also drugs resulted in her having permanent brain damage. But I totally understand what she's saying, because what is the first principle of drug addiction that we're talking about on this channel? The biggest predictor of addiction is trauma. If you have trauma, you are significantly more likely to develop a drug addiction. And so that's basically what Demi Lovato is getting at here, is that she felt internalized trauma her whole life, to the point that she thought about taking her own life, and drugs helped ease that pain. Even if it was for a little bit, she's still here with us today, so we can thank drugs for that, while at the same time saying, damn, drugs caused you to have this permanent brain damage. And so, you know, people moralize drug use, and I don't think that's right. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to get across through in this channel, is that drugs are an incredibly complicated thing. We can't just demonize drug use and say, oh, all drugs are bad, you know, never use drugs. No, that's not really how this works. Sometimes drugs are a tool for good, and sometimes drugs are destructive. And I think Demi Lovato is a perfect example of that, because if it weren't for drugs, she wouldn't be here today. And if it weren't for drugs, she almost died. You know, she has permanent brain damage from drugs. So again, two sides of the same coin. Super difficult topic to understand, but I appreciate all of you tuning in to the channel. We trying to get these subs up, man, so hit that sub in the comments below. Please drop a video of someone talking about their drug addiction that you would like me to react to. I would definitely love to hear what you guys have to say. Anyway, hit the like, subscribe to the channel. We trying to get the numbers up. I appreciate all you beautiful peoples.
Turn on, tune in, and drop out, drop out, drop out.
Peace out, y'all.